Good morning and welcome to the Daily Devotion. It's Friday, March 5th, 2021, and in 2 short weeks plus a day, it'll be spring. My name is Mike Bridgewater and I'm the Operations Director here at the church building, and on Fridays we've been going through the book of Hebrews. Last week we learned about the main point, that being the better priesthood of Jesus, one that is permanent, one that is able to save forever, and that although he's taken his seat at the right hand of majesty in heaven, he is still serving us in heaven by making intercession for believers at the throne of grace. Next, we're going to learn about the new covenant. From the timeline, we know that the new covenant was spoken about by the prophet Jeremiah in chapter 31, verses 31 through 34. Last week in verse 7, we mentioned, but we set aside verse 22, where it says, "By the same extent, Jesus also has become the guarantee of a better covenant." Here in chapter 8, in verse 6, it says, "He is also the mediator of a better covenant, which has been enacted on better promises." And at the end of chapter 8, in verse 13, the writer states, "When he said, a new covenant, he has made the first obsolete, but whatever is becoming obsolete and growing old is about to disappear." Before we go through the details of the new covenant, we need to have a common understanding of a couple words. And those two words are new and covenant. Let's look at the word new. There's two Greek words that they use for new, and those are neos and kainos. Neos just means new in time. I got a new car, brand new. The second word is kainos, and that's the one we want to understand. And the best way to understand kainos is it's not only new, but it's better in quality. It's novel. There's something special about it. And something so special that it makes the old type obsolete. And an example to use are cameras. I've got this old Yashica 123 Model G, and it's a functioning camera, and you can look through it. It's got a sight lens and a other lens that actually takes the picture. It's a medium format black and white camera. You put film into it and press the button and you can take a picture. But I also have this Kainos new Canon R model, which is so much better than the old Yashica camera that it actually makes that Yashica camera just obsolete. The other word that we need to understand is the word covenant. And the word covenant here in the book of Hebrews appears more times in these last 6.5 chapters in Hebrews than it does in the other 263.5 chapters of the New Testament. And if you look up the word covenant in the dictionary or look it up online, you'll see that it's an agreement, it's a contract, it's a pledge by 2 or more parties. And when I think of the word covenant, I think of a homeowners association has covenants, and that's how people have agreed to take care of their property when you're in a homeowners association. But there's 2 words in the Greek that are used to make an agreement, and those are syntheke and diatheke. And there's a big difference between those two. The first word, syntheke, is a bilateral agreement, and what that means is the parties making the agreement are on equal footing. It's like when you go to a car dealership and you're gonna buy a car. You're gonna sit there and negotiate with the salesman and come to terms that you agree to and that the car dealership agrees to. And we see a variation of this word is used in Luke 22, of all places, where Judas makes a deal with the chief priests. And we can see this in Luke 22, Luke 22:5. Let's read that together. It says, "And he left and discussed with the chief priests and officers how he was to betray him to them. And they were delighted and agreed to give him money. And so he consented and began looking for an opportunity to betray him to them away from the crowd." Diatheke, on the other hand, is a one-sided agreement. And this is the Greek word that has been translated as covenant. An example of a one-sided agreement are those terms of service that we, click through when we download an app or some software onto your phone or computer. Another type of one-sided agreement that you're probably familiar with is a will. The person writing the will sets the terms. The receiving party has no ability to negotiate the terms. You're faced with a choice in that case of accepting the inheritance or refusing it. An example of this word is used during the Last Supper, just a few verses down in Luke 22, and it says, "And he had taken some bread and given thanks. He broke it and gave it to them, saying, 'This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me.' And in the same way he took the cup after they had eaten, saying, 'This is the cup which is poured out for you, is the new covenant in my blood.'" As you see here in Luke, the covenant Jesus speaks of has one-sided terms. So let's look and see why the terms of the new covenant from Jeremiah 31 is so much better that it makes the old covenant obsolete. We see with fault versus faultless, earthly tabernacle versus heavenly tabernacle, written on stone tablets versus written on the mind and on the hearts and mind, entered through birth, you were the sons of Israel, versus open to all to be born again of spirit, had to be taught versus already knew it. God has put eternity on man's hearts. Sins remembered to the fourth generation versus sins remembered no more. The law could not justify. Jesus, our new covenant mediator, does justify. I want to wrap up with another example of one-sided terms from one of the most well-known passages in the Bible, and that's John 3:16 verses 17. It's probably familiar to you. It says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, so that everyone who believes in him will not perish, but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to judge the world, but so that the world might be saved through him." God sets the terms, and we're presented with the choice. This new covenant from God is what differentiates Christianity from other religions. God drew near to man, so man could draw near to God. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 11, he said, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden light." Don't be like the Israelites. After God provided for their salvation from Egypt, they shook off the yoke. Jesus is our guarantee, our mediator of the new covenant. Embrace the yoke, hold tight to the yoke, and live the abundant life. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful with your understanding of the letter to Hebrews. We're continuing with our Exodus series this Sunday, and I'm expecting we'll have a mountaintop experience. I hope you can join with us here in the building at 9 or 10:30. Have a great day. Bye-bye.